Hello, thank you, Faye, and good morning, everyone. Here we are. We'll go to the next page. Okay, we're going to look at accessibility basics. Okay, so what we're going to look at today, what we mean by digital content, accessibility basics, which it will be the majority of the session. Who needs it, how do they use it, and how to check it. Built-in accessibility. A very, very brief, everything will be a very brief touch today. A quick look at assistive technology, or a quick mention of it. Looking at accessible content, or looking at your existing content and what you're going to do about it. A very quick mention of legal, and then we'll review what we've done. I had to make a lot of assumptions for this session. And the basic assumptions are that I don't have to tell you how to use a PC or a Mac or whatever it is you're using. Some understanding accessibility issues and knowledge of content creation. We'll talk about content creation later, but basically making or amending existing learning materials to fit in with your own or organisation's curriculum or agenda. And that covers the whole sort of list of possible ways of delivering content. What we won't be covering are anything particularly technical. We will mention the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, usually referred to as a WCAG. We won't talk about any detailed setup of assistive technology because that is not for this session. And we won't, surprisingly, be talking about the accessibility or not of specific software other than basic office systems. There is a very good reason for this, because while you may think my thing that I created to deliver this lesson doesn't fit with these tests that we're going to talk about today, therefore the thing I used to create it isn't accessible, is not a valid assumption. There's a lot of features within existing software that most people don't use. It's a bit like if you have a big chest freezer and you only use it to create ice cubes, you're not really using it to its full capacity. And the same way, I will talk about some of these things you can do within Microsoft Word, because I am making a presumption most people will have some access to that. But specific software, I can't tell you whether it's the software or it's the way it has been configured or the way it's been put together in this particular learning object, for want of a better word. And that picture there, we're going to be a broad brush today. And I'm going to also be highlighting ways of some free to use images and things like that, just because we might as well, why not? And the Noun project is fantastic, and you can use free, they create icons that are free to use. Just a quick mention that everything on the internet does belong to somebody. A lot of people don't like hearing that, but it's true. Okay, before we start, do I do this? I think I do, don't I? Where do you think you are on your accessibility knowledge? This is not a scientific poll. This is only 1 very little, 5 pretty good, and somewhere in between. We put descriptions there, but really it's for you to think where you are now, and then we'll revisit these towards the end of the session. So I'm going to launch the poll now, and if you can put where you think you are on a scale of 1 to 5, and there's those options there. So if you can remember what you've put, that would be helpful. So we're getting some, oh, that's 2's looking good at the moment. We've got 50% on 2. I've never done a scale one before, so I'm not sure how long to leave this for. It's still collecting responses. So, oh, I've got percentage voted on there, so that's good. I'm not sure if the delegates. Can the delegates see this? I'm not sure. So, but we're nearly up to 80% voted, so. So at the moment we've got 20% at 1, 20% at 4, 57 at 2, 9 at 3, and nobody's completely very experienced and knowledgeable. Can I just say, if you do have any questions, I noticed there's some hands raised. You can add those in the question pane. I think it's a question pane. If you click on questions, you can put some questions there, and we'll stop part way through. I won't wait till the end. Sarah and I will. Sarah will read them out, and we'll have a look at them then. We've got 86% of people voted, so, and we've spent 2 minutes on that. So I'm going to close it now. Okay, so if you can remember what you put. There we go. So share, there you go. So hopefully you can see those. So that's just to give you an idea of where everybody is, and that's to give me an idea where everybody is, to be honest. Okay, I'm going to carry on. Am I still screen sharing? Those. Hoping you can see the screen. Sarah, if you can't see the screen, can you shout and let me know? Or Faye. Okay, not all disabilities are visible. Pretty obvious, I think, but this is just a quick line drawings to show a variety of options of somebody holding a sign saying dyslexic, somebody's learning, there's an ear there to indicate someone may have hearing disabilities. There's a young lady with dark glasses who may well have sight impairment, and there's someone using a laptop. A motor impairment also is a significant difficulty for people using digital content. And not just these, this is just a sort of a quick image. Also, disabilities may not be permanent. Disabilities could well be not just physical, but also emotional, mental health problems, as well as neurological. And the point of creating accessible content is to ensure that as many people as possible can access and use it, so that it's usable and understandable. Okay. So digital content isn't just text. Digital content, I know this is a bit, I'm sure everybody knows what it is, but it's worthwhile just reinforcing that it is anything that's stored either digital or on computers or any other sort of technology. It includes text, such as websites, social media, ebooks, learning environments, as well as other content, images, audio, video, as well as interactive content, such as basic quiz, up to a fully fledged, all singing, all dancing virtual reality environment. I think it's important to remember that digital content is always, sticking my neck out there, more accessible than analog, because with digital content, the user can choose how they are going to access it. With, yes, mostly. So these are different types of learning content. If you do a Google search for learning, you will almost always, the majority of images, particularly if you do a search for images, you will get a picture of somebody with a book. And let's be honest, that is the main source of how we get our information, whether it's for learning or for daily life. But text is not always particularly accessible for quite a large number of people. Of course, we can also get learning from listening to things, watching videos, playing games, being interactive, as I mentioned before, interactivity, quizzes, virtual reality, but also in discussion and collaboration. These are really very well enabled by digital content, both synchronous discussion like we are doing now, or asynchronous by text messages or message boards or discussion boards. And collaboration and discussion are a really important part of learning. Going back to reading, a lot of people do find accessing text to be a problem. And it could well be that they have learning disabilities, they may have dyslexia, they may have reading, they may not be able to see very well. It could well be that they could be a sign language user, in which case English, i.e. text, is their second language. And that in the industry, for want of a better word, we use the term print impairment, which means somebody just struggles to access text. And so by providing information in a variety of ways, you're giving each learner a choice of how they access it. So what we're talking about here is removing barriers. In many colleges and other organisations, colleges, universities, learning providers, there's a great deal of effort goes into getting students over the barriers. So basically, learning support staff quite often spend a lot of time giving students metaphorical or virtual step ladders to get over the barriers. And what we're talking here is removing the barriers to give them a nice, clear road. There you go, a nice road going off into the sunset. These are both images from the Noun project as well, by the way. So what we're looking at with accessibility, or universal design is an alternative voice term, is removing the barriers and enabling learners to access content in a way that's right and relevant for them. So how do people with difficulties access the barriers? There's two screenshots here, and both are showing how somebody may want to manipulate text. So the first one on the left is where it's a Word document. It's just a screenshot from a Word document where I've changed the screen to white on black. It's a very popular and very often used. There are all sorts of lots of other variations, of course. I did have one student once who had a turquoise background with bright red text. Used to give me a headache, but there you go. That was right for him. So that's one option you can do. So if you're checking if something's accessible, particularly if it's not in a Word document, because if it is in a Word document, it will be, can you change the colour and texture of the background? If I was doing some testing for a commercial company who were creating crafting patterns, and they were very, very smart, very, very smart looking patterns, and they went down the very common route of providing lovely, very, very tasteful grey text on a white background. And when you did this to it, put it on white on black, the text disappeared altogether. So it's contrast that is also needed, but I'll talk about that later. On the right hand side of the slide, you see is a screenshot from the immersive reader, which is an option in Microsoft Word now. Microsoft Word, Microsoft OneNote, and in fact Microsoft Edge has this read aloud option as well. So what this is showing is the feedback bit that's highlighted in the screen. Is highlighted because that read aloud button is reading it out loud using the built-in voices, which are in Windows or other operating systems. At the bottom of this, there is a link to a roadmap that Runshaw College over in Lancashire created a few years ago now, actually, and they implemented students with learning disabilities or dyslexia were allowed to use text to speech, as in read out loud, for their examinations. And they produce this great roadmap, which is, it basically shows you what you need to do to sort of set this up in an organisational format. Interestingly, what the students said in that was the alternative to having digital text read out to them by the machine, if you like, is having somebody sitting next to them and reading their examination papers for them. They felt much more comfortable being able to listen again and again, if necessary, to a piece of text being spoken by the device rather than the person, because they had to ask the person to read it again. Now, obviously, that's only anecdotal, but it's worthwhile remembering that that's a significant issue. As I say, we are galloping through this. A lot of people need to be able to magnify the screen. I actually do some work for UFI that involves a lot of reading on screen. There is no way I sit and look at size 12 text on my screen. I increase it to about 150 at least. And what it does on my screen, because of the way I've got it set up, is it reflows. So if you look at these two screenshots, on the left-hand side, we've got that feedback document again. And if you see, there's the left-right scroll bar, which is showing where the pink arrow is. So if you make it larger in a Word document, this is what happens. You have to move your text left and right. If you were using Microsoft Word and you want to be able to read it without having to do this, if you go to View and then click on Web View and then make it bigger, you can go up to huge amounts of magnification and the words wrap inside the screen. Now, the reason I use this for doing a lot of reading on screen is because you're not, the line that you're reading isn't as long, so there's not as much tracking. You can read much, much faster. You can also just use your down arrow to scroll really quickly, and it's really efficient. If you have ever been tempted to buy those, there's quite a few apps available for tablets and things like that, so speed reading apps, I think they're called. And essentially, this is what they do. They make the line shorter, possibly bigger, and they'll scroll it. You can do that on PDFs. I do that on PDF. If I have a large PDF to read, I do that on there as well. But I won't tell you how to do that now. That's a treat that you'll have to ask for. Okay. This also applies to mobile devices. So on the left-hand side is a screenshot from my phone, and if you see it in the options at the top, one of the options there is speak. You do have to set this up on an iPhone, but it's very easy to do. You can change your voices on there as well. I have a nice Australian lady who talks to me on mine. And on the right-hand side is the same content, again wrapped inside the small screen of an iPhone. And I actually had this as white on black text. Did a screenshot, and of course I've forgotten this. Please don't do this now on your phone, because you'll all disappear off and try this now. But if you change your phone or a tablet to white on black, which I think is called high contrast, and then take a screenshot of it, your screenshot won't be white on black. There is a reason for this, which somebody with much more clever technical knowledge would be able to tell you. Right, that's text. So before I go any further, Sarah, are there any questions do you think we could answer now, or should we just carry on?
Hello, Lisa. Hello, everybody. No, there are no questions in the question box at the moment. So I think carry on, and we'll just invite people who, if you have questions as we're going along, please type them in the question box and we'll pick them up as we go along. Thank you. Back to you, Lisa.
Fine, that's absolutely fine. Okay. Next one. Excuse me. Images and graphs. You will probably see when you're doing this comes up if you put images in a PowerPoint presentation or even a Word document, you get an option for alt text. And this is a description of the image or the information that it's conveying. Very quickly, alt text do not say image of. You simply need, so for example, if you wanted to put a picture of Van Gogh's sunflowers, for example, you could say painting of sunflowers by Van Gogh, lots of yellow and all those sort of things if you wanted to. Now, the reason that alt text is needed is so that a screen reader user can hear the description. A screen reader user, for those who are not familiar, is somebody who has limited or no vision and accesses the computer by listening to the information. So it doesn't, we were previously talking about having the text read out loud. A screen reader doesn't just read the text, it reads all the icons or the buttons, the formatting. It's a very long, and it's a big piece of software. And it's quite scary for a non-screen reader user to hear it, to be honest. But it is important. There's a message here on it's a good discipline, is alt text, mainly because it makes you think about why am I adding this image to this page? What is it doing? How is it improving or enhancing or adding to the information that is already on the page? So if it's to break up the page, you know, like people put a twiddly bit in between starters and main on a menu, that would just, there's an option to say this is decorative. So you wouldn't use an alt text for that. However, if it's an image that, for example, going back to Van Gogh's, I don't know why I said Van Gogh's sunflowers, Van Gogh's sunflowers, image showing the effect of, I think he had some sort of disease, isn't it, which made him very prone and very receptive to yellows. So it could have been for that reason. So it's important to put why. What is the information this image is giving? Graphs start to get even more complicated. There is an organisation called Textbox, and I've put the link at the end, and they will provide extremely comprehensive text, alt text for images, graphs, diagrams, all sorts. But as I say, this is just to let you know what things are rather than exactly how to do it all. Audio and video, obviously, is crucial now in teaching and learning. So context is really important, and knowing your audience. Are you going to have to put subtitles and transcripts and with everything you may do? It depends. I think you'll find the answer to a lot of the questions in here will be, it depends. So, for example, if you're going to do a quick 2-minute video showing the correct way to separate an egg, for example, you know who's going to see it, you know your audience, and you're just going to post it somewhere on either the virtual learning environment, or send it to students, or put it on YouTube and give a link. And you know exactly who it's for. Do you need to add subtitles or a transcript? Probably not. If you do want to, you could use the automatic subtitles in YouTube. They're a good start. They're hideous at times as well. I have a YouTube video which is demonstrating what a screen reader sounds like, and YouTube is convinced it's in Dutch. However, the YouTube automatic subtitles are a good start. However, not only is it the information, what's the life of the media going to be? So that was an example of a very quick, here, this is how you do it video. If you are creating a big piece, big learning object with, it's going to have a lot of student interaction, it's going to play a crucial part of the course, you'll need to plan, just as you would plan a learning journey, if you like, in a learning object, you would need to plan your audio or your video as well. Preferably with a script, with a shooting script. That means deciding what order things are going to be done. And that they actually provide a really good basis for either the transcript or the subtitles. So again, it depends. You may decide, depending on your audience, that you need to also have an audio description on there, and that is quite a skill, and it's something I would certainly not. I would have to do a lot of training myself, I think, before I would sort of offer to do that for someone. So I think that's quite a specialised skill. So this is just, as I say, quick, broad brush. So we look at built-in accessibility. Windows, this is showing the ease of access center, where you can do lots of changes. Not only what it looks like, you can do things like add sticky keys. If you've ever hit the shift key by accident 5 times, you'll get a thing will pop up saying, do you really want to switch on sticky keys? So what sticky keys does, for example, is if you can't use 2 hands, so it's quite difficult to do shift and, I'm trying to think, something that's shift P, I don't know what shift P, or control P, which would be print, with 1 hand. So if you have sticky keys, it means it sticks the control or the alt or whatever key down. And there's all sorts of things within there. And again, there's a link there to My Computer My Way site from AbilityNet. That's another great organisation with a lot of really, really good resources. And then we'll look at built-in accessibility. I've mentioned Microsoft Word quite a lot, mainly because it does have a lot of options in there. You can make all those changes: size, colour, background, have it read out loud. As I said before, Microsoft Edge works really well. You can also dictate text in Microsoft Word. It works really works quite well, to be honest. And I think this is only in Office 365. I may be wrong, not sure. You can do all the other above in Google, but it does take a bit more effort to get things like the text-to-speech, but you can do it. Quick shout out for Google voice typing. This only works in Chrome, but it is really effective. It's if you want to dictate, or for language learning. Just very quickly, a few years ago, I had to do a small part of a speech in Dutch, and my trainer very kindly, I told her what I wanted to say. She wrote it out in Dutch. She then wrote it out in phonetic Dutch, so how I had to say it, and then she gave me a recording of her saying it. I used Google voice typing because you can change the language. So I spoke what I thought was the phonetic Dutch, and then I could check whether it wrote down the correct thing that I'd said. Quick note, it didn't for a long time. It took me a long time, but it did work. It did work. So it's really good for things like language learning. And it's very effective. Other accessibility options. Of course, now there's the assistants, or the Apple Siri, Microsoft Cortana, Alexa, Google Voice. AbilityNet have got a very good lot of information on those. And again, these are really, really helpful for a large number of people. I really regret showing my grandson how to use Siri, I'll be honest. Okay, one more resource on technology in the workplace. This is a resource that was actually done by TechAbility, and it's on the ETF website. It is in fact an interactive PDF poster. For some reason, and this is because it's on the Education Training Foundation, you have to download the poster and then get the links. They may have the links next to it now, I'm not sure, but there are some really good things on here. I went through it and was able to, I now have shortcuts on my text, which I didn't know I could do. For example, you know, on Instagram and you're doing all your hashtags, put it on a shortcut on your text. I didn't know I could do that till I saw those. So, oh, don't want to do that. Assistive technology. Assistive technology is any device, software or equipment that helps people work around their difficulties or challenges. It can be low tech as well as high tech. So low tech might be a pencil grip or a plastic guard on the keyboard, dare I say, a pair of glasses, all the way up to high tech, which is an all singing, all dancing tablet set up for switch access, voice control. A really good start is the Techability service, which I've mentioned before. I'm not sure if they'd be able to actually help, but there's a lot of information on their site there. They're a very good service, great bunch of people. However, I would say if you think yourself or a member of staff or a student may need to use assistive technology, I suggest you go to a specialist. It may well be that there are options. If we go back to the using a freezer to create ice cubes, there may well be, and quite often there is, an option within their existing technology that they can use. A lot of mobile devices now have the most fantastic accessibility options, which have been absolute game changers over the last sort of 13 to 10 years. 2007, the iPhone really made a big difference. So that's all I'm going to say about assistive technology. And where would you start then? So, first question, are your Word documents accessible? Are they set up using headings? And do your images have alt tags? I may be making a horrendous assumption here. I'm presuming the answer to those questions are no. I may be wrong. We'll talk about headings in a minute. Are your web pages readable if you change the colour contrast? Are they readable if you change the size? Adding to that. Can you navigate your website, your VLE, your learning objects, anything within your digital remit? Can you navigate them using a keyboard? A lot of people find using a mouse very difficult. I had to do most of this presentation I did without using a mouse because I get intermittent carpal tunnel syndrome, and it's excruciating to use a mouse for me. And if you use proprietary software, can you amend the size and colour of the text? That seems to be one of the big issues. So just looking at headings for Word documents and Google documents, I hasten to add. If you use headings, there's an image there which you click on the view ribbon, check the navigation box, and if you have headings, you will get not only a contents list, but an interactive contents list. It means you can move paragraphs and sections. That's a link to a video I did, which just shows moving paragraphs around, because it really is really easy and it makes a big difference. It also means that if you look down that contents of those headings, you can see, is this the document I want? We're talking about large documents here. This is not going to be an issue if your document's only 2 pages long. But for large documents, you can go down, you can have a look down and think, do I really need, is this the document I need? Microsoft Word used to have an option for automatic summary of the information, but it doesn't have that anymore because this is the automatic summary. Because if the document's put together properly with the headings, you can browse it. So not only can you browse it, somebody with dyslexia who may well be very seriously put off by large blocks of text, they can browse it. And also someone who is a screen reader user can also browse those headings. If you just think about how a screen reader user accesses text, and if you're ever in an audio file and you're trying to find a specific bit where somebody said something, and you've got to scroll backwards and forwards, particularly in audio, it's actually quite difficult. Whereas that is how a screen reader user accesses a long document. So being able to go down here, it means they can scroll the contents of the document without having to go through listening to all the content. I haven't mentioned colours and contrast either. Use a contrast checker, particularly on web pages or learning objects, something like that. And also, this is a screenshot from the WebAIM site. The link again for that is on later on. So with contrast, for example, the text size is important. So if you look at the bottom of that one, large text, this white on a sort of turquoisey blue, it passes for a large at AA, and these are just levels of technical compatibility. Anyway, so it passes at AA, fails at AAA, but for normal text it doesn't pass. So contrast may be okay if you're using large text, but not if you're using small text. And they're very easy to use. That link is, as I say, to the WebAIM. So other content. This is basically saying what I said before. Can you highlight the text? Change background colour, size. Can you copy the text into an app to have it read out loud? Sometimes your read aloud may not work, or it doesn't have that option, but you can highlight and copy the text, paste it into a separate app and have it read out to you. Just a text reflow. Can you move around the page using a keyboard? Try a few pages, see how easy or not that is. Here's what other people are doing. The University of Kent has done some amazing work on accessibility. So it's worthwhile seeing what they've done. FutureLearn are the free Open University MOOCs. They're very good. That link there is to a digital accessibility course. It's very good. It just so happens that the University of Kent has a free online digital accessibility conference next week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. Colleagues of mine are in the panel. It's nothing to do with me. I'm only promoting it because I think it'd be a good idea. And then that question at the bottom. If you are going to make some of the, and you can do the tests and all the rest of it, what are you going to do and how are you going to move these ideas forward within your organisation? You will need buy-in from senior managers. Just a very quick note about the accessibility statements, the latest guidelines from the Her Majesty's Government. It is all public sector websites, that's colleges, charities, universities, schools. I think schools might be exempt, I'm not sure. That says how accessible different parts of the site are. And if bits are not accessible, you just put that in the statement. So this has to be done by September this year. And further resources, as I mentioned there, Future Teacher, actually I haven't mentioned before, is a European funded project. It's run by Alistair, I used to work with, and with some other people. They do the most fantastic webinars. Then the next one is at the end of June. It is on self-assessment and mastery learning. And there is so much information in those. The resources are eye-watering. There's that many in there. I really strongly, even if you just go and look at their pages, you will be amazed at the information that's on there. WebAIM accessibility testing is the site I've mentioned quite a lot before. Part of that site is also the WAVE website checker. So if you just go to that site there, you put your URL in the top and it will come up with your website and lots of marks and all the rest of it. Textbox, I mentioned earlier, provide alt text. They also provide details of accessibility of third-party software. Now, it's mainly universities that are using it at the moment, but it may well be that you could, because if you're using third-party software in your organisation, you shouldn't have to write an accessibility statement for that software. That should be with theirs. So what Textbox are doing is sharing the information from the various organisations, and I do think it's worthwhile having a look at that, particularly if you're concerned about those sort of things. And finally, the Future Teacher project at the top there is written using Xerti online toolkits. That XERT is called Xerti. It's free to use once it's installed. However, it is not. It's a bit like Moodle. It's free, but it certainly is not no cost, because you need technical staff to install it. You would need to train people, and it's a significant installation before for you to move on with those. Right, just some of the links there. Free icons there in the now Pixabay. Incompetech, fantastic, really, really good, free to use, royalty-free music. Mainly done by a guy called Kevin MacLeod. Whether he just sits there composing music all day, but it's a brilliant site. And also Unsplash, some really good images, really good quality photos. Okay, I think we are. Right, we go back to poll number 2 now. How we do it? Oh, not too bad, 40 minutes, it's long enough. We'll go to poll 2. Oh, I did poll 2 second. I'm sorry, Faye, I've done this the wrong way around. I should have, anyway. Think about what you put for poll number 1. Ignore the things that are written here, and see if you've gone from 2 to 3, or you've gone from 5 to 1, or whatever. Please fill in the poll now. Oh, we've got a few more 4s this time. Good. And more 3s, definitely more 3s. We were 2s and 4s, I think, last time. Just leave it a little bit longer. See, is anybody else going to? No, I think we're there. Right, I'll just close this and share it. So that's where we are now. So 3%, very little. So we've got number 3, 45% now. Some experience and need more information. It's not a disaster if you've gone from 5 to 1, to be honest, on here, because it may be that you thought you know, Lou, and then you decided you didn't. The point of this webinar is to give you, it's a bit like the generation game. You've got the sliding doors and the conveyor belt. So we've got the teddy bear, the cuddly toy, that's the same thing, isn't it? And the cassette player, age, and all the other things as they go past. So these are the things you can do, and there's a huge variety of ways in which you can tackle the issues. But if you've left today with more understanding of the issues, that's good. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, I think. Oh, hi, there we are. Press the wrong one. Right, and hopefully you can see my dashboard. No, not my dashboard, my screen. So, how are you going to use the information you've got today to move your organisation onwards to being more accessible and inclusive? You don't have to put your answers in the question pane or the question box. I'd just like you to think about it, and you know what. Hopefully, it's given you something to think about and ways to move forward. It has been very basic, I know, but we had to make a decision what level to do it on. There's a lot of information. What I've done is I put a lot of links in there. So, Sarah, I don't think we've got any questions, have we?
You would be surprised. We've got lots of questions,
Oh,
Lisa.
right, go on then.
Right, okay. Well, the first one is a really interesting question from Ellie, which I said a strong opinion on. And what Ellie asks is, do you think it better to create all-round accessible e-learning and web pages, or have separate versions?
The former. Only because you're doing things twice. I was once in a stand-up argument, with a designer, and he said he had, oh yes, we have these, and we have accessible vanilla versions. I think that question is rooted in the suggestion that accessible means vanilla or boring, and it doesn't. I made a decision on this presentation to go with plain screens, with a plain white screen with black text and the navy blue UFI on it as well. Mainly because there was so many options I could have used. I would have had to put, and I was putting a lot of images on as well. There was a lot of images on this presentation. So I made that decision. It didn't have to be like this at all. But for webinars, I think it's important that the screen is really, really clear. There's a big difference between, or for something like a presentation, I think it's really important that the text and things are clear. If you can, I would say create, for your own sake, to be honest, create websites and content that is accessible.
I'd just like to completely agree with you there that
Thank goodness.
if you can make one version, do so. And quite often, if you're considering accessibility, you are also considering usability and using, because there's a big crossover between good design, which makes things usable, and good design, which makes things accessible. And quite often, if you design things with accessibility in mind, you'll find you will have also designed it with really good usability in mind, and it makes the whole site or the whole learning object much more usable for everyone. So, well, Ellie, we're saying one version here if you can, and I think
Yes,
as described, there are tools to do it. We've also got, so that was from, I hope that works for you, Ellie. We've got a question from Connie, and this is more, this is about subtitles. And Connie is interested to know, how do you prepare and then add subtitles to an online video clip?
On YouTube, it's you just click. Oh dear, let me see. These are the. This is why I wasn't doing technical things. There's an option on YouTube to either add transcript, or I'm trying to see where it is. I'm not going to start hunting around on my screen because that is really not good. Would it be helpful if I left a link? I think one of the questions says asking for the links. The presentation and my notes for the presentation underneath the slides will be available, won't they, Sarah? After this,
they will.
And all the links are available in there. I haven't put the YouTube one in. I can add that one if you would like me to.
Yes, and I mean, Kev, thanks, Kev. Kev makes the point that YouTube offers closed captions during playback, and you can also get them on Microsoft Stream, offers closed captions and a transcript.
Yeah, that's right. Would it be helpful for a definition of what closed captions are as well?
Please.
Right. On notes. Okay, I'll add those on.
Kev makes another point that Google voice typing works in docs easily. Yes, absolutely agree. If you're as bad a typist as I am, you have discovered Google voice typing a long time ago.
Yes, it's fabulous. It's really good. But by the way, just as an add-on to that, whether it works for foreign languages, I got a cheer and claps at the end of my little bit of Dutch. It worked.
Right. Okay. Well, we've got questions and comments coming in thick and fast, so I'm going to whip through some of these. We've got a very useful suggestion from Chantel, which is a Carway Pun at Home Office Digital has created posters summarising accessibility guidelines, do's and don'ts, which can be free to download.
Yep, they are really helpful as well, Home Office posters. Yep.
Do you want to add a link to those in the notes?
Yeah, I'm just writing it down now.
Okay, that would be great. Because Caroline asks, is there a standard accessibility policy that you or UFI could share? Lisa.
Policy or statement? There are model statements on the government website. The information on the government website is really very good indeed. It's very clear, and there are model accessibility statements on there. There may be something on the text box site as well, the site I mentioned right at the end that does the alt text and the sharing of accessibility options for different types of software. I can put the link for the model accessibility statement. Would that suffice, do you think?
I think that would be really useful if you could add the link to the model accessibility statement. That would certainly be really useful, I think.
Yeah, I can do that.
We've got a couple of points on using captions. I'm not sure about this. Caroline asks, Google Captions does not work in Zoom chat rooms. Any suggestions as to what we can use? Google Captions apparently only works with PowerPoint presentations, but it doesn't work in Zoom chat rooms.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's way beyond my knowledge. I have used Zoom. I can tell you who may be able to help you is the future teacher people. The link that's in the thing. Ron Mitchell is the guy who runs their webinars using Zoom, and if he doesn't know it, I'm not sure what. I think, should I find out and write it?
Well, this is one of the great beauties of these webinars, that you can ask the audience, and Kevin provided a link to an article on closed captions in Zoom. So what we'll do is that we'll make sure that that link is available. Thanks very much, Kev. That's great, really useful.
Yeah.
Other questions that we have. Ian asks, do you know of many MOOCs using brain sensors? I don't, but do you?
No.
Right.
No. Brain sensors for what? For actual creating or accessing or creating digital content? No. No. Anyway, yeah, I'm sorry. No, I don't. I have no idea. I might just do some research on that though. Sounds interesting.
Okay, now that's really useful. I've got a more general question which I want to come back to, which I think is a very interesting question, which is how do you make webinars more accessible?
It depends on a number of things. Firstly, I would always send out, if somebody needs to, send out the presentation to somebody in advance so they can go through the presentation at their speed, and they can possibly access. Another reason for sending presentations out with the notes filled in is that it's much easier for a screen reader user to access it. So that's one option. Another one, I haven't used GoToWebinar for a good year or so before today, or well, actually earlier this week when we did a test. And there's so many things changed in here. I was astonished, and it's much better. So there are options for closed captions in webinars. I remember doing a session with, I couldn't even tell you who it was. I'm really sorry. A good 8-10 years ago with a webinar company on how they created accessible ones. I think the answer is it depends. You need to really drill down into the options in your webinar software, and if you go to them, they should have. So if you go to the GoToWebinar website or Adobe Connect or WebEx or Zoom or whatever, they should have details on the accessibility options. But a simple one is send them the presentation first. Whether a screen reader will work on, for example, the dashboard we have here in GoToWebinar, I don't know. I mean, this is why I'm very wary of saying yes or no about specific software, because you do need to drill down and really get into the sort of the nuts and bolts of what it can and what it can't do.
Thanks, Lisa. That was, sorry, I meant to credit, that was Luke's question, and I think that's a really useful set of tips for sending out stuff in advance. I see we've actually got quite a few questions on captions, and I've actually had a suggestion that when we run our repeat next week, we can cover off stuff on captions in more detail. I've had a volunteer from the audience who's going to help us from that, so thank you very much.
Good.
No, let me just see. I think there's one more kind of question that's been asked a couple of times, which is coming back to the subject of backgrounds. Really about why you chose to use a white backgrounds, and particularly are white backgrounds okay for dyslexia?
For me, I use white ease, simple, no other reason. No, they're not useful for people with dyslexia. A lot of people with dyslexia really struggle with black on white. I worked with a college once, and they implemented everything printed on cream paper. There was nearly a riot. But it is much better much better for people. But a lot of dyslexics would have options on their laptops whereby you can get really simple tiny bits of software that will put like the equivalent of putting a Quality Street wrapper over the front. Sorry, that's not very technical, is it? Over the front of your screen. So I showed somebody, I've done this many times. She said, look, she says, the woman who carried a piece of purple plastic that she put in front of a laptop screen every time she used it. But you can actually do that using software. There's a lot of little free bits of software. I don't know if anybody remembers the Access apps, which has really been superseded by sort of other things now. So if someone was dyslexic and they were concerned with a black on white, I would expect them to have their particular system set up whereby they could read black on white, because that's the sort of default colour. Does that make sense?
That certainly does. That certainly does.
Just also on backgrounds, it's really good. It's really important not to have busy backgrounds, and also on images or presentations, but also on videos and audio. I once got the biggest roasting ever for doing a promotional video about, we were setting up an ambassadors process for young people with disabilities and got them to tell how they use their technology, and I put a background music on it, which is really bad for people who are autistic, for people who are deaf, for people who have learning disabilities. Oh my goodness me, I got such a roasting. So not only image backgrounds but sound backgrounds you need to think about as well. Sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, Ellie's just come back with a comment that I've been told that screen wrappers for dyslexics don't suit all. And what about those that don't know they are dyslexic? Well,
yes, absolutely. There's something I've actually chosen not to put in at the end, is there's the JISC 3 steps. There's knowing about accessibility. There's making sure your audience know, because I think that is a really good question, because I can stand here and go, you can do this, you can do that. On the headers section, I sat with a guy who has been using a screen reader for 30 to 40 years, and he didn't know about headers in Microsoft Word, that he could read them. So do not presume that the learner, the user, has the knowledge. So, you know, the whole idea that, you know, millenniums, or what was the phrase a few years ago, digital native, nonsense. If people don't know it, they don't know it. So it's sharing that information as well.
Lisa, that's really, really useful. I'm aware that we've kind of hit the end of our hour. So did you have any kind of final thoughts before we wrap up?
Oh yeah, just a quick, that's say hello from me. That's me. Please, by all means, get in touch. More than happy to answer any more questions if we've missed anything out. I've got quite a long list of things to do, and I'll get on with those today and get them on the notes to go out. I think that's whenever that is, Sarah. I'll send those to you, Sarah.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to hearing more about doing captions next week. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to everybody who's been part of this webinar. Couple of notes. We will be sending out a link to the slides where you'll be able to access all the links, plus a link to a recording of this webinar. We'll send you the link to those, and they will also be on our website. Just look for webinars on our top menu. We'll be running a repeat of this next week, next Tuesday, and so with an added bit of info about the using captions. So please come along then. The following week, we're going to move to doing our webinars on Wednesday, and our next one which won't be next week, will be the following week, will be on gamification. And we'll be sending you a link to join up for that one if you'd wish to. And finally, I am looking to do a little bit of research as to what you as the audience want out of these webinars. So I may well be sending out an email to some of you who are our regular attendees to ask you how we can improve the webinars going forward. So thank you very much for attending. Thanks to Faye Manjinder at the back, and thanks most of all to Lisa and to all of you.
It's been a delight. Thank you for inviting me.